Welcome, everyone. Yate, welcome to the Narratives on History, Belonging, Activism panel discussion in honor of Native American and Indigenous Heritage Month. This event is organized by the Columbia University School of Social Work Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. My name is Loretta Riggs, and I am the Executive Assistant to Dean Melissa Begg. I am from the Navajo Nation in Arizona. I am deeply honored to be a part of this event and thrilled to be with you all today. Yad shige do shidene, she Loretta Riggs yenishya, hona ni nishle, lezatlana bashishchin, tobahanda shiche do torajini deshnale, lanape hoking haste, nashduids o de nasha, akwad ego dene astan nishle. Before we begin, I would like to open this program with a land acknowledgement, which has become a customary practice to honor the first peoples of the land in which the School of Social Work in Columbia University sits upon. We respectfully acknowledge the land on which we gather this today is occupied, unceded, and seized territory. We honor and give thanks of gratitude to the Enei Lenape, the ancestral traditional stewards of the land throughout the generations, who allow the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories, and the university that occupies these lands. We pay respect to their people, past and present. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world, who contribute their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hopes of a better life. And some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that brings us together here today. And please join us in uncovering the truths at any and all events. Our fabulous co-moderators this afternoon are Carmelo and Christopher Young-Ha-Won. Carmelo is the Columbia School of Social Work's inaugural Assistant Dean of Diversity and Equity and Inclusion. She has more than 17 years of experience in student affairs and many years of experience conducting workshops and facilitating dialogues on diversity, self-awareness, and critical conversations. Christopher Young-Ha-Won is of the Wonju clan from Central Korean peninsula of the Hans people. We're lucky Chris has joined CSSW at the beginning of the year and serves as the program coordinator for the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at CSSW. It is now my pleasure to turn it over to Christopher, who will provide us with an overview of this afternoon's panel.
안녕하세요, 여러분. 고맙습니다, Loretta. Thank you so much, Loretta, and hello, everyone. Welcome to our celebration of Native American and Indigenous Heritage Month. So before we get started, I just want to go over a few things, which is our panel objective, structure and technical logistics, and our community agreements to set a sacred space before moving forward and handing the mic off back to Loretta to introduce our wonderful, wonderful panelists. So our panel objective is for collaboration among various identities to share and honor alternative, counter, authentic narratives to the dominant narratives that perpetuate the stigmatization and oppression of Native American and Indigenous identifying folks. In a moment, the panelists will discuss the panel's main themes: identity, belonging, and activism. Panelists will then respond to questions previously submitted by audience members. Given the timing, please understand that not all questions may be addressed during the panel. And we encourage you to share any reflections and questions you may have in the chat box, and any expanded discussions, please. As for our community agreements, we ask everyone to respect yourselves, others, and the environment. There may be topics that may be triggering, especially in regards to oppression and colonization. And in that case, please feel free to take care of your needs or to step out if you need to do so. This is a celebration of Indigenous experiences for both panelists and participants alike. Thus, there will be active moderation to prevent violence of all kinds. Lastly, in all efforts to be as inclusive and to hold ourselves accountable, we ask that you submit any feedback to our office at, and I'll type this into the chat box, bit.ly/DEI feedback, or contact us at swdei@columbia.edu for sure. And now I would like to hand it back over to Larita to introduce our panelists.
We have a remarkable group of Indigenous women who are joining us this afternoon. Marian Patterson is a member of the White Mountain Apache tribe. She is the founder of the online language learning group Gotistinyo, created in January of this year in an act to reclaim her Apache language to share with her child before the endangered language vanishes. She has connected with Apache language speakers from neighboring Apache tribes and hopes to revive Western Apache so she can speak fluently to her in her mother and grandmother's original language. She volunteers her time to work with her community on reviving the language in an effort for more Apaches to read, write, speak, and create content in the language. Her work with elders and knowledge keepers has reached Apache language learners around the country and the world. Noel Altaha is a member of the White Mountain Apache tribe. Noel is a licensed social worker, an alumna of CSSW, and a founding member of the CSSW's Demands Group. She works with tribes across the country on enhancing justice systems as a senior program manager on tribal justice team at the Center for Court Innovation, a justice reform-based agency in Midtown Manhattan. In June of this year, Noel began working with Marian and community members to revitalize the Apache language through Gotistinyo. They are the coordinators of the Apache Language Project 2020 and the hosts of the Apache Acorns and Pollen podcast, a digital storytelling experience about the group's journey to revive an endangered language. Enei Begaye is from the Enei and Tonatum nations. She is Tachitni and Toritchitni clans. Enei is a co-founder and active member of the Fairbanks Climate Action Coalition and the Black Mesa Water Coalition, and the executive director of Native Movement. Enei was named one of Otney's readers' 50 visionaries who are changing our world. She lives in Fairbanks, Alaska with her partner and their 4 children. Last but not least, Talia Eames is Sitka Kawangtan of the Wolf House, raised on the traditional home of her grandfather's people in the village of Angoon. Talia is the manager of the Re-Entry and Recovery Department for the Central Council Tlingit and Haida Indian Tribes of Alaska. She is currently charged with opening 3 re-entry transitional housing programs for tribal citizens returning from incarceration. She enlisted in the Air Force at age 22, where she served 10 years. And now, without further ado, I'll like to turn it over to my wonderful colleague, Karma, to begin our discussion.
Thank you, Larita, and thank you everyone for joining us today for this panel discussion. It is an absolute honor to be just a part of this event and to be in space with this, to share space with these amazing women. For our panelists, I just want to remind you all that we do see this as a conversation. So even though I'm the moderator, please feel free to ask each other questions, to riff off one another, and don't just rely on me for questions. So to get us started, since this really is a celebration of Native American and Indigenous folks, I'm going to ask everyone to share sort of how do you identify, and how does your identity inform the work that you do, particularly the work that you've chosen to do now? And I'm going to start with how you appear on my screen. So Noel, if you could share with us how you identify and how that informs your work. Well, it looks like you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, great. Connecting by my phone. But thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for welcoming me back to the space. And yeah, I'd just like to just introduce myself briefly in my language with the disclaimer that I'm still learning. So probably lean on Marian for tips to improve after this session, but I'll start with how I am practicing my introduction. Dagot Shishti, Noel Altaha Wenze, Shiman J. Velasquez Wenze, Shitat Mize Altaha Wenze, Tutgai Nishni, Yangogai Yanasha. So I basically introduced myself, my English name. I don't have an Apache name, but I acknowledge that my English name is Noel Altaha, and I'll talk a little bit more about where I'm from, but I am happy to be here, and I'm currently calling in from the Canarsie territory on Paumanok land, and my friend, shout out to Taylor Redbox, for sharing that this Brooklyn, New York is recognized as Paumanok land. So I want to acknowledge that. And I also am 2,000 miles from my homeland in the Southwest, which is currently 3 hours east of Phoenix, but it's an Indian reservation called the Fort Apache Indian Reservation. It's larger than the state of Delaware. And I'm currently enrolled in that tribe, which is about, give or take, 16,000 tribally enrolled members, but far more than that for folks who have lineage or descendancy. But I'm also a part of the St. Carlos Apache tribe, which is a sister tribe next door to the White Mountain Apache tribe. And so I wanted to start with that, but I also wanted to share a piece open with this as well, which is, again, my attempt at practicing my language. But let's see if I can say this. Da tishis behini da isni. So that's one version, and I'll translate it in a second. But the other version is Ina shisle asto be'ina gosi. And again, I'm practicing, but that's a written translation. I have it written down, but it's the translation is in Apache is that Black Lives Matter. And I asked elders what would it mean to do the transliteral translation of these two phrases, and it helped me further understand my identity when I could understand the language and how it relates to the world in which I'm navigating right now. And a couple elders from the group, Gostin Sinyo, kind of helped me translate that in our Apache understanding, we respect all energy, we respect all spirits. And so in that way, we want to honor and acknowledge that we are in solidarity. I'm in solidarity. And I think that's a big part of my identity, is recognizing my relationship to others and really taking the time to honor that and acknowledge that. But let's see, I'm going to take up too much more time, but my identity really ties back to my homeland, which again is on the Fort Apache Indian Reservation, and from that it connects directly to language and culture, and speaking culture with a big C here. But I think that I struggle with the question identity, to be honest, because it feels very like Western and American to I guess to my Apache mind, because everything is in relationship to your clan. So my clan is Eagle Clan, and we go by matrilineal recognition of our matrilineal side. So my clan is Eagle, born of the Whitewater people, and that's how I connect with my community. That's how I connected with Marian, and that's how I guess that's the beginning of how I identify. So thank you.
Thanks, Noel. Enei, I have you up next.
Yat edo hehe ine dashijinet hachi ni neshlen do toj ini bashishchin do ashe dashanala ado ana aktame dashache akt ednes zan neshle ado shantro de is in nasha. So of course, right when I start talking, my dog wants to go outside.
Totally okay.
Right in front of the door. Yeah, so I said I'm Navajo. Here, I'm just gonna get out of here. I'm working from home, and I'm zooming in from the Enei territories of the Lower Tanana, which is Fairbanks, Alaska. So, but I'm Navajo and Thanaatam, and those I grew up in Arizona. I grew up on the Navajo reservation, in Kayenta and Shanto, and yeah, identity. Whew. I mean, it's an ever unfolding journey, but I think that, as an Indigenous woman, I very much similar to what Noel just said, my identity really is about relationship to the land. And that's been quite the journey as someone who I feel a lot of responsibility and connection to my homeland. I grew up going to ceremonies. I feel very privileged in that the fact that I grew up going to our traditional ceremonies. My grandparents were medicine people, and so I'm learning that there's like different stigmas around even those ways that I wasn't aware of growing up, thankfully, right? So growing up, that was just the way I knew, and everything was very oriented matrilineal. And so, of course, that's not to like fully romanticize our people. Like we're just real. We're just dealing with our own coloniality as well. But I went to college in California, and that was a culture shock, but also, yeah, just trying to navigate how to be, other people's ideas of what being Native is, and our own embracing of what it is to be Native, and beyond just Native, what it is to be Dene, and because I grew up really much more in the Dene philosophy or worldview. And then coming to a land so far away from my homeland pushes my own understanding of who I am even. And so I think that where I've come to is really understanding that how I could be fully myself in this land was really also building relationship with this land, and trying to be in right relationship with many people around me, with my kids, with my partner, colleagues, and there's so much beauty in all of our ways. My partner's people's ways, the peoples of this territory that we live on, and so much knowledge within our languages that informs worldview that is invisible to everyone else. And so I think part of being Indigenous in this day and age is really navigating this invisibleness too, and like trying to hold firm in our form and in our who we are and the fullness of who we are, while the mainstream, right, and the rest of the world continues to invisibilize us and call us something else, right? So it's kind of becoming, for me, it's becoming just kind of unapologetically all that I am, Indigenous within this colonial system. I'm not perfect. I don't speak my language fluently. There's a lot of learning I'm still doing, and now there's my partner getting the door open. I'll wrap it up there. Thanks, Karma.
Thanks, Enei. Talia, if you can share with us your thoughts around identity and your personal identity.
Sure. My dog heard the other dog and he's stirring too, so we might get some barking. Again, my name is Talia Eames. My Tlingit name is Begaye. I did grow up very traditionally in a village of, a village on an island of about 500 people. I think that's where, like, when I think about my Tlingit identity, I just think back to my childhood. I'm also Scandinavian, so, I've had the privilege of being a very blendable Indigenous person. I kind of, wherever I go in the country, people don't know what Alaska Native people look like, and they think, oh, are you this, are you that? And so I kind of get this idea of trying to be Native in other spaces and what that looks like, because it can be very different. Being, white passing has been a privilege in some spaces. When I moved from the village to a larger community in Alaska, I hung out with the white kids, frankly, because there was a lot of discrimination against Native people in this town that I moved to was actually the traditional homeland of my mother's people. So it was extra shocking. But so going back to the identity piece, I understand the relationship to the land. That's a lot of where my identity comes from. Southeast Alaska is very, very rich in resources. And, they say you can tell a lot about a culture from their art. And, we didn't have a written language. We carved our stories. So, the idea is if you're not stuck so much in survival mode, then you have time to really develop your art. And, we are people with totems, and I'm sure people are familiar with Pacific Northwest art. But I mean, you can tell that we were thriving in this space. And so when I think about culture, I think back to the things that kept us alive, the food. There's a saying in Tlingit and Haida cultures that when the tide goes out, the table is set. There is so much, like just on the beach alone, that could sustain us. And I mean, we eat well. So I think I would be, remiss to not mention food in the same sentence as identity, because for me, that's one of the strongest reminders when I'm just like eating my traditional foods. And, the excitement people have when you tell them that you have herring eggs to share or dry fish or things like that. So I guess how my identity informs my work specifically is bringing that connection back to the people that I work with. And by that, I mean, our participants in our reentry and recovery programs. It was mentioned I did serve in the Air Force for 10 years. And I missed a lot. I was pretty young when I left Southeast Alaska, and, I thought I was out. Everyone in my family served. Native people have a very high rate of military service. And I thought I was doing, an honorable thing. But, my grandma had so much to share and said, when are you going to come back so I can teach you this and I can teach you that? I'm like, well, I can come back for a couple weeks, right? I can't take, a year off from the Air Force. But, she had, she said, things go by seasons. I can't, I can teach you something in 2 weeks, but it's not going to stick. And it's only going to be this one part of our whole lifestyle. So I think about that a lot when I think about creating programs for our tribal citizens coming out of incarceration, because there's a lot of shame in that for me, that I didn't learn those things from my grandmother, because you could argue I was off doing something honorable. And I lost that identity. I lost that connection. And when you talk about people that have been incarcerated and have lost those connections due to something that they carry a lot of guilt and shame about, reconnection with identity can be triggering. They can feel like they don't deserve it, or, there's so much there. So I guess when I think about identity, I think about the connection to the people, and not just the people that helped me form my identity as a child, but, the people that might be struggling to find their identity now. Goodness, geez.
Thank you, Talia. Marian, can you share with us your thoughts on identity, particularly how it impacts or informs your work?
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. I'm using the phone and the computer because one of them isn't working. Hi, everybody. My name is Marian Patterson. Marian Patterson gose Jessica's undeshli aya itakaishli aya bideyu yet na shai ana ashonkladiji message ishte. Just a little introduction in my language. My name is Marian Patterson, and I'm a White Mountain Apache tribal member. I am an Eagle Clan, and I am from Cedar Creek, Arizona. One of the main things that keeps coming up in all the other ladies talking is about the relationship to the land, and that's one of the main things that that I would say. In our language, it explains things in our language. We have plants that we are forgetting because it's traditional plants that, you know, the elders, they would go out and try to teach the kids on how to say it, how to prepare it. These are the things that are being lost, and not only the medicine, but also traditional foods. We are losing a lot of things, Apache science. There's like different words for many items, and once all of these words are forgotten, then we won't be able to continue to teach our kids on exactly where they're coming from. And I believe that identity, we have to look in the past and be like, okay, so my ancestors, they went through all of this for me to be here. But if we don't know anything from the past, how are we supposed to look forward as a people, as, you know, connecting and understanding that there's a reason for us to be here? So when I used to have like little small meetings with my relatives, because, you know, they are very fluent in Apache. I used to be pretty fluent when I was a baby, but it seemed like growing up, everybody was speaking English. So I started, you know, sort of not speaking Apache. So I started making videos for my kids. I have an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old. So I was able to say something in Apache, and for me to connect to them, it has to be like technology. So I started recording and I started saying things with them, and I was posting it on my Facebook page. And that's how it all started, is people started connecting. They started saying, hey, you should do a YouTube channel. And I was like, me, a YouTube channel? No, I don't think so. I'm too shy. You know, I can't do that. But people kept connecting. There were people from all over the U.S. and even people from, you know, just everywhere in the world. They started saying they wanted to have more connection to the land. They wanted more connection with our people. And the only way to do that was to learn Apache. There were some elders that said that they want to know how to write. So I think we are all trying to reconnect to our identity. We're trying to like remember things that we are forgetting, like especially with this whole pandemic going on. Everybody's going crazy. They're like, their anxiety level is sky high. And I think if we can just, you know, calm down and just be like, okay, everything is going to be okay. We've been through worse, or we've been through so much more, genocide and just everything, just a lot of things that have happened. And I think if we can remember our past, then we can look forward and be like, yeah, we can do this. Apaches, they have songs for everything. The songs, they convey things, or that's something that we would understand. They have stories. Our land have places that are named because something happened there. And if you don't know the story, then you don't know why the land is called that in a certain way. Our clans is description of where we come from. Like I said earlier, I'm from Begaye. Begaye means behind. So there's a main hub on our reservation. It's called White River, where everybody goes. It's like everybody is connected. Everybody lives there for the stores and everything. But for my people, we came from Begaye, means behind that big mountain, you know, like behind there. So that's where I come from. So when I say Begaye, people know, oh yeah, that's where that Cedar Creek. So identity is basically connecting back to our land, to our roots, to our Apache traditions, to our plants, just to basically everything. And I feel like it's empowering to know all of these things. So when I say I feel like I identify as Apache, it's just not just one word. I feel it just incorporates everything. So And I'm also very thankful for you all to invite me here, and I'm really excited. And thank you so much. So I'll just end there before I rant on.
Thank you, Marian, and thank you, everyone. And please, at any point, feel free to hop in. All of you shared this sense of relation, right? It's part of your identity, whether it was a relation to lands, to other people, to language. And I'm wondering if you could speak more about, what it means to be Indigenous and indigeneity, particularly now, right, in 2020, and how you preserve that as part of your identity. And I'll just open it to anyone.
I'll jump in. It's what a great question. All great questions. I will start by saying, just the connection to each other and outside of the human connection, just the connection we have with the air and the elements around us. And even, I just met Enei the other day, and sharing our clans and how we're connected and how we're relatives. And her and I share the same clan. They're different places, but she's Tachitni, and Tachitni people are my grandparents. So, in one way, she's my grandparent, or she's my grandma, and then, I can be her grandma. And just to be able to connect with, other Diné folks that I've never met before, and have this instant connection. I think it's something that is, beautiful. That's something that our ancestors put in place for us, and something we still use today, and stay with our language too. I mean, it's a very I always think of being Diné, or being Native, and being Indigenous as a very having a very political identity, in a very bureaucratic sense of the word. Growing up on the reservation, and all that goes with that, but also our relationship to the federal government and to bureaucracy here, and the political aspects of that. But I think just what Marian said really highlights this navigation that we have to do in unlearning and relearning a lot of our true selves. And I think I'm learning that along the way too. As working in the School of Social Work and being around people who advocate for equity, human rights, and I think it's just important to keep those at the forefront when thinking about me as a Diné woman in this time and space, where like Enei, growing up in a very fluent household. I'm not fluent, but I can read, write, and speak. But even that brings a lot of dynamics to my own identity, and the struggle that comes with trying to reclaim myself as a Diné woman, and also, live in a world where we are fighting invisibility, or fighting for a spot to be recognized. And I can go on a tangent, but I'll stop there for someone else to jump in.
I just want to pick up. I just wanted to pick up on what Loretta said there of like political, how political it is also to be Native. And I think that's something that in this day and age, right, a lot of people don't realize that we're, you might be a part of a federally recognized tribe. You might be a citizen of another nation. And I think that's something that is very real also in the political sphere of our identity, right? We can have these connections, but we also need to recognize that we're the only peoples that have to have papers to prove our blood, right? Our percentage of blood. And I had to have this conversation with my kids even, they were like, so wait, we were trying to get their papers so we could do something that we needed. And I oh gosh, I could go on about the blood quantum. We could just rile against that because it is a termination policy, right? It is something that was created to get rid of us. Anyway, my kids were in the car with me, and they were like, so wait, if we don't have kids with a Navajo, or then because I'm registered, or yeah, you can only be one tribe too. I mean, in the government's eyes, right? And that's just so they were like, if we're registered Navajo and we don't have kids with a Navajo, then our kids aren't anything, and it like brought me to almost tears. I'm like, no, we don't, you are always something. You are full, you are fully Dene, you are fully Gwich'in. These are the peoples that you grew up understanding and knowing and being a part of, and yeah, that blood quantum piece of termination policy and the politics associated with our citizenship and who we are as people and tribal sovereignty, all of these pieces of complex bureaucracy that really build into who we are as well.
Definitely a common conversation. I've had that conversation with my partner where, like, if we had kids, like, they would be, part Diné and part Kanaka, Maoli, like, all just trying to do the math of blood quantum, but also, like, it's just infuriating.
I got in an argument with somebody at the Bureau of Indian Affairs, right? Because they sent my kids' papers back and it said 1/4 Indian. And I was like, if you're going to just say Indian and not clarify their tribe, then why not say all of the Indian that they are, right? And the woman on the phone was like, well, you can only be one tribe. And she just argued. She was Native. I think she was Navajo. I knew from her accent. but she was like, you can only be, she said, this is why you should have had kids with a Navajo. That's what she told me on the phone. I was like, first of all, they're all related to me because we're our clans. Second of all, I mean, how are you going to say that to somebody right now? I've got 3 kids. Anyway.
Marian, did you want to jump in?
I can't hear you. Were you going to jump in? I can go quickly. I just want to share a quote that I pulled from Natalie Diaz, who is a member of the Mojave people, and so she's also like a poet, and I love her poetry. Her book she wrote, My Brother Was in Aztec, and she started her language program. So this is her quote: "Our values and our identity are fed by our language. We learn how to speak to each other, how to talk about the land and water, how to tease, how to argue, how to mourn, and how to dream, all through the language." So she went on to start a language program for her community, and it is called the Aha Mo Kav, the people who live beside the river. And so I wanted to share that quote just because I felt like it helps me reconnect with the work that I'm doing and ties to the commitment and the sacrifice it takes to do language revitalization efforts, especially for me, 2,000 miles away from home. But I think Marian touched on it earlier. It creates an opportunity to challenge oneself and critically think through like innovative solutions to bridge the gap for a lot of language learners. So I'm not sure how much this statistic relates to the White Mountain Apache tribe, but I know that there is a well-cited stat out there that 7 to 10 natives are residing off their ancestral territories. So whether that is part-time, full-time, the reasons for that are vary from economic to education. I know I came to CSSW to pursue my education, and I got a position here, but here in the city. But I'm also very aware of how that removes me from being able to access the language. And so we talked about a little bit about technology and like digital communications. So using like the platform like Facebook, I've been able to reconnect to my language. And our goal is to learn to read, write, and speak, but also think in Apache, so that we can enhance at least for me, enhance my understanding of what it means to be an Apache in the 21st century. But again, it goes back to time, commitment, strategic planning, and support in the community. So we've been fortunate enough to work with elders and Native youth and volunteers through, again, digital media. I'll sit at my computer, have our consultant, a linguist who's in Queens, and shout out to Daniel, and then I'll have Marian and one of our elders that we're working with right now in a smaller project to protect and preserve an ancient Apache prayer. And so it's a lot of navigating the digital space, especially in the time of COVID, but with the intentionality that whatever work I do is just a tiny small piece to a larger like fabric that we hope will be picked up by Native youth. And I think it's just inspiring to see Marian and the other parents share their knowledge. And I know for myself, I learn from those videos, and I am able to apply them in my practice. So yeah, I have a ton of like other quotes that I want to share too, but I just will end it here.
Thanks, Noel.
I think for me, being Indigenous, for me now, I mean, it represents a service that, I don't want to say obligated, but I'm compelled to give to the people that have not been as fortunate as I was to grow up very traditionally. I have a lot of sorrow when it comes to language because I don't speak my language. My grandmother's first language was Tlingit, but I didn't learn. And, it's an oral tradition. We weren't, we didn't have a written language, but there's a huge revitalization effort happening here in Southeast Alaska, which is great. We have an immersion school, which is awesome, but there's not near enough seats, I guess, in that school. And I think being a Tlingit woman, I have a lot to learn. I get panicked because I think, oh my gosh, they say you should learn a language before you're 5. That's when your brain's open. And how am I going to learn this language? It's got, it's a very difficult language. And I've considered, my auntie said, well, you can get a PhD in Tlingit, being Tlingit, and learn lineages and learn protocols and learn family histories. And because all of that, like our ancestors, they kept it up here, which is just insane to me because I don't even know who all my cousins are. So, there's I feel it. I am Tlingit, but I feel like there's a lot to learn. And I think when you're talking about blood quantums, there is a tendency for people to pit their nativeness against other natives. Like, oh, I'm more native than you are. Or I speak my language, like, what's wrong with you? And it's really sad that we've, turned against each other in that way. But, like Enei said, is a termination policy, the blood quantum. And I put in the chat, I said 1 drop, because, that makes you native. Like it's not about how much native you are. And I hate that question. It's like, well, which part of me is native? Like, my arms, my legs, like my brain, like, anyways, there's a lot there to unpack. And then, come on, like we're all, women here talking about having native children. Do you know how much pressure there is to find another Tlingit person who's the opposite clan that's not related to me? That's hard. So I remain unmarried, no children. I've got a great dog. But it's real. The struggle is real. I think like on a larger scale though, being Indigenous, I know there are so many differences between our tribes and everything, but I think we do have, common values. And I think strangely, we all have a very similar sense of humor, because like I see all the memes and I'm like, oh, that came from a reservation, in the southeast or southwest. But I get that. That's how it is up here too. I get the joke. And so I really enjoy seeing, when we talk about social media, people sharing jokes, like native jokes, and that ties me to people all over, because we know what it's like, and sometimes we're laughing through tears, but I think humor, I'm going to just go out on a limb and say humor is very important to Native people. That's universal. So it's nice to have that be, being a part of a larger identity and having solidarity with other communities around the United States. Because I think that we all have a lot of the same shared values, as different as our cultures are. So, sheesh.
You hit everyone head nodding, Talia. So I think everyone agrees around the sense of humor.
Yes.
Just to add
Marian.
a little bit, with like the whole technology and language and everything, I had wanted to start an app like probably 9 years ago. There was like an educational tool for kids where they would learn English. And so what I wanted to do was, instead of it being English words, I wanted it to be Apache words, like just simple words. And then also like I wanted to do an app where like the face, the neat, or like there's just little tiny words that differentiate how you're saying it or who it belongs to. Like when I say my face, she neat. And when I say your face, ni neat. It's just tiny words. I wanted to do like the body and then also the verbs and all of these things. I wanted to just throw it all together in an app and make it accessible to the community for our kids. And when I went out, did a little survey on our whole reservation on how many fluent speakers there were for the kids, because I figured if the kids saw other kids on an app or even a video, then they're going to think, oh wow, that person is my age, I want to learn as well. You know, they don't want to learn from somebody older. Or I mean, that was just my thinking, I'm not sure, but you know, if it's somebody their own age saying it or speaking fluently, then they would want to like learn, they would be more engaged and, you know, connecting. So unfortunately, when I went and did the whole survey, there was less than 100 kids at the time who spoke fluently in our language. There's a little community called CBQ, and that's where my father was from, and they had more fluent speakers there. So my idea was to use these fluent speakers and put them in videos, put them in an app and everything. But like I said, unfortunately, I went back to some elders and they said, no, we don't want our language out there. We don't want anybody to learn. We don't want Doc to learn, you know, we don't want white people to know our language. And it was sort of like, I was like, but at least somebody will learn, somebody will teach their kids. So long story short, that was cut short for me. And then, but I still kept trying to figure out how is it that I can have our language continue. And that's how this all started. But in another sense, growing up, like being like, I read something about bullies, like being bullied as a kid because you spoke fluent Apache was not fun. It was like you're too res. You know what I mean? It was like, oh no, this person is too rezzed out, or you speak fluent Apache, let's not hang out with them. They you know, it was just really weird, and it was like, it was the opposite of being like the cool person or whatever. I think sometimes people, they stop talking in their own language because they feel like they have to fit in and they have to speak more English. But I think that if we were to reconnect them to our history, to the people that have came before them, and to understand that bullying is not good. You shouldn't make fun of somebody because they speak their language. You shouldn't make fun of somebody just because they're different than you. Because in our traditional sense, everybody had a place. I mean, everybody had their own ways. Everybody was doing something on their own. Like the medicine people, they had their own knowledge. The ladies had their own knowledge. Even the men, sometimes they would partake in the ladies' responsibility because it was just accepted that way. This whole two spirit, it was like accepted. Sometimes they had their own responsibility in the community, but it's like recently it was like, no, it's wrong. It's wrong. No, it's always been accepted in the Native community. It's always been a norm for us. It was like, even the pictures that you see, it, like historical pictures, you see them there. They're like the important part of this whole community. So like inclusion was something that we had as Native people. We like included all, everybody had their space. Everybody had their duties and their roles. And I feel like that is an identity in itself. This is who we identify as. This is who we were. This is who we are. And this is who we should be. So that's like this whole idea of, let's get back to where we all started from, which is first our language. And second, just like Noel was saying, we are dissecting this like ancient prayer. And it's like, sometimes I just sit there like, wow, like that's amazing. That somebody way far back, like, was thinking about me personally. Like, wow, he was praying about me. You know what I mean? So I want people in the future, like the kids, I want them to be like, oh, this person was thinking about me at that time, and I want to learn more. So that was my feeling when we got away from this, from the dissecting the prayer that we're doing now, where it's like, wow, this is amazing. So that's my thing on like this whole inclusion. It's like, we shouldn't be like that. Like, we shouldn't be able to distinguish, oh, this person doesn't belong to us, or we shouldn't bully them for some. It's just, I think that going back to our roots and learning and understanding everything that we've gone through, I think that's a way of healing as well. That's a way of being more respectful and understanding exactly who we are as a people. And that's the goal for us, is to continue forward, teaching our language and teaching our culture, teaching the traditional foods, teaching just everything. So I'm excited, like, to continue and to do this whole Apache dictionary. If you were to look online right now, Amazon has our Apache dictionary at $600. No Apaches have $600 to spare and like, oh, let me buy this book. $600. Our goal is to have the book in every Apache children's hand for free. That's our goal. Noel and I were discussing this, and we're like, we want to do this. We feel like everybody should learn. It doesn't matter if you're not Apache. We want everybody to learn so that we can understand our language will survive. So, but yes, I just wanted to let you know that it was just it's just amazing to know that we come from a very strong people, and all the natives. I mean, not just natives, but everybody. I mean, we're all like getting put into little sections, and our minds are starting to be messed with. But it's like, no, we should open up our minds and understand that we all come from one place and we're all struggling. We're just trying to do the best that we can. But that's my input with all of that. Thank you.
I just wanted to uplift quickly, as I didn't talk about the language, but when I commented, but I was just wanted to uplift also this kind of the understanding that we're all have our role, our responsibility, and all of that being embedded within our language. And often lift up the fact that we don't have, many of our nations don't have pronouns in our languages, right? And that stemming from the fact that we don't have a binary of genders. We don't have a recognition of that binary. In fact, in Navajo, the understanding that we have 4, some people say 5 genders that don't have any translation into English, is why we don't have these pronouns. So when I use she, they in English, I recognize both that my identity outside of a binary, but also the fact that when I hear my elders, often growing up, translating between Navajo to English, they would always get the gender mixed up or in English. And a lot of times I hear they would use they instead of, and they're speaking about a singular person. And so for me, using they, them is also a part of like decolonizing my own language and gender as a binary. So I just wanted to uplift that. Those are like one small pieces of how our language informs so much of how we see ourselves and others in the world, right?
Thank you for that, Enei, and thank you for all of you. I keep hearing these sort of common themes of sort of reclamation, right, of identity, and to sort of become more visible and no longer be invisible, and drawing in the past of ancestors and history and just belonging, right? And I'm curious, and I know I'm sure some of our audience members who are non-native, non-Indigenous folks, like, what can we do to support those efforts for reclamation, whether it's of language or culture, or passing down this knowledge. If anything, the answer may be nothing, right?
I can sort of say something about that. I think just basically respecting and probably actually going out and probably trying traditional food, because just something in regards to maybe even learning a little bit more about them, but you don't necessarily have to, or going to a powwow, maybe asking indigenous people something about their culture, some or just even learning the language also. Just like I said, we're trying to revitalize our language, and it doesn't matter if you're Apache. In my sense, I would appreciate it, like if somebody came up and like any random person and came up to me and said, "Hey, I want to learn Apache." I'll be like, "Yeah, let's do it. I can invite you to my page, or let it's something that I would be very happy to hear." And if they would respect it and they would understand that not all natives are the same, because sometimes they think that we're all one clan, one tribe, and all one language, which is not true. We all have our own cultures, our own dances, our own language. And there's just so many other different things that they do. One of the things that I wanted to share with you all was that my son's school, he's the only native with long hair. His hair is down his back. And so last year they were questioning why he had long hair. And so I went and spoke with his teacher, and so his teacher went and told them about Native Americans and told them about the Apaches. And so he said after that, they were really interested, and they were very intrigued by that. So I think just going, if there's somebody in school that is having problems due to their hair or anything different, just explaining politely. When we as natives should be open-minded and understand that they want to learn, or we would be eager to teach them, because we're all teachers. We should all be open-minded and be able to express our culture, freely, and let people understand. That way they wouldn't feel like they shouldn't go, or they're not welcome. Just welcome them into any traditional ceremonies. Or like for us, we have sunrise dances. We have sunrise dances every summer. So I invite any of you to come next summer and experience this awesome opportunity for you to see what our culture is and what we've been practicing for hundreds of years.
I'll jump in.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and
go ahead.
echo that. Thank you. Yeah, I would also encourage people to commit to lifelong learning, as you're doing with everything else in your life. Take the time to research what is available online. Take the time to be intentional with your questions and framing, and also be okay with not every Native wants to answer all the questions. So there are resources out there. There are books out there, a ton of podcasts, just like I'm seeing in the chat. I also would encourage, I brought it here, but I recommend like the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, also known as UNDRIP, and just as a primer for understanding a little bit more about the unique relationship between sovereign nation states and like tribes and federally recognized tribes and nations. And I mention that because that an introduction to the document UNDRIP helped form my understanding of why sovereignty matters, and how there's an inherent right that, for me, I'll speak for myself as an Apache, my understanding is that there's an inherent right to speak my language and to know my language, because that language was given to me not by the US government, but by Creator. And in that knowing, it inherently, for the context of like this colonial nation state, it creates this perception of a threat, or I mean, some people might think it is a threat to speak your language. It's a threat to the colonial system, because it's a reminder that we're reminding them that we have a memory, a collective memory from before this country was formed. So that's one piece that I would recommend. And we referenced it in, over the summer, Marian and I, we rallied around transitioning the rights, the copyright of our dictionary to, it's made in community generated. It's a bilingual dictionary, and I think the prices online that I saw were like anywhere from 3,000 to, you know, the lowest 600. But we transferred the right, or we started to transfer the rights from the publishers to our tribe. And that was such an interesting process, because I'm not a lawyer by training. I'm a social worker, but I'm determined to have the dictionary be accessible, because I think that knowledge is a way to strengthen your identity and continue your responsibility to people who have yet to come. So for example, just to bring it to CSSW real quick, when I was a part of the demands group, we formed a set of demands, and I backed the leaders of the group, shout out to like Cindy and Jasmine and Ellie and all of Alma, all the amazing people who were a part of that group. And I thought about all of the people who would be coming to CSSW, the people who made the decision to call CSSW home for the next 2 years or so, or max. And I wanted you all to be honored at your commencement graduation, because it's so important in my culture. I feel a sense of deep gratitude and honor whenever I've had a chance to have a song honoring my achievements, honoring my commitment, my sacrifice. And so hopefully that is a tradition that CSSW will continue to honor and feed that seed that we got to plant, because it really is an opportunity to continue honoring the truth, like it was shared earlier. And then I think, I would just say also to respect that our culture cannot be, our knowledge and our culture cannot be privatized, or it cannot be like capitalized as far as for-profit reasons. It's really for community and for us to connect to who we are. For example, I have been able to talk with a botanist who is non-Apache but works in St. Carlos Apache, and I got to speak with him about how Apaches don't have maps, right? But they do have songs, like Marian was saying, and in those songs are stories, and also that is the map, essentially. That is the landscape of where to go, and that's why Apaches really didn't get lost when the U.S. Military Army was trying to track down all Apaches to put them on the Indian reservation, and so it took a lot of commitment on behalf of so many people before me, and in my time here, I'm working hard to commit to that same responsibility so that whoever comes after me is able to pick it up. And I really think it's in the, at least one of our mantras is around that, is teaching our children. Again, I'm sharing a quick quote. I'll end it here with a quote, but this is from Daryl Kipp, and it is about his language efforts that he's been doing, and it's called the Indigenous Language Revitalization, 21 years in the trenches of Indigenous language revitalization. Excuse me, the title is Encouragement, Guidance, and Lessons Learned, 21 Years in the Trenches of Indigenous Language. And he talks about how he is committed to the Blackfoot language and how it's really about teaching his children and just Blackfeet children, or children of the Blackfoot Nation, how to speak their language. Because he says the most sophisticated computer program cannot mimic the genius of a child speaking their tribal language. True tribal language revitalization ultimately rests with our children's ability to the abyss of language lost today in our tribal communities. And so whatever work we do, whatever work I get to be a part of, I hope that an Apache child can be able to pick that up and continue forward the work.
I'll just say that for me, I think the call to action would just be awareness and understanding. I think everyone can look up what land they are on right now and just have that awareness of, the history, or even the even allyship. I think, and any work that any people on this panel, or beyond that, any attendees that are here can include us in their, include Indigenous and Native people in their work, however that might look like. I think I would just say that I want what all people of color want, equity, human rights, and I think it's a fight against trying to work towards reconciliation for our communities. There is a lot of trauma that still needs to be unlearned from our communities, and a lot of just where I grew up on the res. And actually, me and Enei are neighbors, like very close. And this is the first time we're meeting, which is incredible. Just a lot of abuse, a lot of, just a lack of resources. And, in the time of COVID right now and anti-Black racism, I think the extreme economic, health, and social damage that is happening around us, I think, this is a time for that awareness and understanding, and to be included in the conversations, even if we're not at the table. I think our people are doing a really good job at resurgence and revitalization, and bringing back a lot of these accidentally muted myself. There's still a lot of work to be done. There's still, my father's generation are the boarding school kids who were abused for speaking their language and being taken from their families, and that generation is so close. So living with some of that pain and trying to unlearn the trauma that our elders grew up with, and also trying to just survive this colonial place that yeah, it's just sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard, and that's when we need allies and we need people to, help us have a louder voice for all of the um, fundamental rights that our people need. I'm thinking about winter now, and it's just snowed on the res, and a lot of people still don't have electricity. I grew up without electricity and running water since I was 13, but I feel like I'm the lucky one. My family is pretty lucky to have those resources, even though I didn't have them for most of my life. I didn't feel like I was missing a lot, but now, you see that elders are cold, they are thirsty, they are hungry. And so this is when, that pain is that we carry around, I think is just what we need is just people who have helped. So I do appreciate people who have given to Native people, especially during the time of COVID, because the federal government in the first place didn't want to fund us. And so we had to fight for that funding and PPE and all of those things. So thank you all, even for being here. I think that's a big, huge step to showing your support, and I yeah, for that.
I think folks, how to get engaged in supporting Native issues, Native people. There are a lot of community organizations or grassroots organizations and other organizations. I guarantee wherever you're at, Native people are organizing to make change, whether it's policy changes within school districts or within local municipalities. And I think listen, that's the first thing, right? Just listen, because, and like someone said earlier, like, you don't run to your first Native friend and try to like ask them all the questions, right? You should ask permission to like ask a million questions if you have that, and know that it's a lot of labor. It's a lot of emotional labor to like educate all the time. So learn and listen. Like, there's so many resources out there, like UNDRIP, like there's so many great books and articles. We have our organization, Native Movement. We're a grassroots nonprofit organization based in Alaska, doing Alaska grassroots organizing. And on our homepage, we have a link to a whole page of decolonizing theory and resources. We do a training called Untangling Colonialism, Decolonizing Advocacy. And part of that training is really building a shared history with each other, because we recognize that we don't have a shared history in this country. We have a history that's been taught to most people in the K-12 system that has not necessarily included this history of boarding schools, that hasn't, included the fact that these boarding schools didn't just stay in the 1800s. The last boarding school closed, Bureau of Indian Affairs boarding school closed in the 1980s, right? So this history is very real and relevant to us currently, and having major implications still within our communities. And we're all complicit, whether we're Native or not. We're all a part of that history. And so build your own understanding of our full history. Read, learn, educate yourself, listen. I think part of the work after we've done that is to move along a healing path, right? Whether you come from settler colonialist ancestors or Native ancestry or enslaved ancestry, like, we have a healing path because we've all been impacted by colonialism. And part of that healing path, and it looks different for everyone, right? So the same path of healing is not going to be the same for white folks as it is for people of color, for Indigenous people. But part of that healing path I think is grieving, and then investing in the peoples that are doing great work, the peoples that the organizations, whether that's investing with your money or investing with your time or investing with your, where you can, your knowledge, time. I think part of getting into the roots of really investing in Indigenous communities is like Marian and so many said, make an effort to learn some language of the peoples of the land that you're on, because those languages are like science books. The languages are knowledge systems. They carry knowledge systems that have lived in relationship, in right relationship with those lands for thousands of years. And so, you may not become fluent in those languages, but beginning to make an effort to get a glimpse at what that knowledge system has been in right relationship with those lands is our responsibility now, whether we're Indigenous to those lands or not. Our responsibility as now people who live on these lands. And part of that then is also really recognize the political realities as well, and figuring out how you can support sovereignty and tribal sovereignty in your areas or community organizing. So yeah, that's it.
Talia, feel free to jump in.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay, perfect. I'm so sorry. There was a power outage. So I believe we're talking about how non-Indigenous folks can support Indigenous.
Yep.
Okay, great. So, I've heard a lot of conversation about language today, and I think it's a beautiful thing. I love that we're utilizing technology to teach our language to different generations and make it more accessible. But I think, it's also important to recognize that we have other connections to culture that might be more accessible than language, because there's there can be a lot of barriers to learning your language. There can be a lot of shame. There could be a lot of my grandmother spoke Tlingit as her first language, and I didn't learn from her, a native speaker. And so I get a lot of anxiety when I think about learning in a school setting. And this is going back to what I was saying about the reentry work and what non-Indigenous people can do is recognize that, our identity is so much. Dr. Walter Soboleff said, and he was a reverend here in Alaska and a very well-known and respected Tlingit leader. But he said, when you know who you are, you do not hurt yourself. And so that's something that, we as a tribe are trying to bring into our reentry and recovery work, is giving them that identity piece. And a lot of, non-Indigenous programs, state-run programs, federal programs, they don't recognize the value in our identity, and we already know what we need to heal. And one of the problems I have come across in the work is these institutions wanting evidence-based practices and not, recognizing that, I mean, what's more evidence-based than, since time immemorial? I mean, the things that we've been doing, and they've helped us, thrive for, uncountable years. And, just recognizing that we know what we need and giving the support to build these into our programs, and not just tribal run programs, but, and our people are all over the place. The urban Indian, we don't talk about that very often. In Alaska, we don't have reservations. We have one reservation, but we are in the community. And, we're 16% of the population in Alaska, but we're 37% of the prison population. That is so disproportionate. And yet, what did they do last year in our local prison? They closed our carving shop, which is one of the connections that our citizens had to culture. So I guess what I'm saying is, these institutions and non-Indigenous people need to understand that we have the answers already, and we're not westernized. I mean, I think there's been a lot of imposition of Western ways on us, and trying to fit our traditions and the things that are important to us into a Western paradigm, such as saying we have to have these evidence-based practices in order to get funding, or in order to even, get validation from an institution that, hey, yeah, this is a program that we want in our jail, or this is a program that we want in our, our health center. We don't need to research these things. We are these things. So I would say that's one of the big things for me. And then, allowing those, and recognizing that cultural identity comes in so many forms. One of the things we're doing as a tribe, when we're creating these reentry houses, is we're building a cultural foundation in a way that's accessible and gives a person agency in how they want to identify and reconnect. We'll be bringing in knowledge bearers to teach, songs and stories, and preparing food, and making moccasins and drums and carving and art and all of those awesome things, and introducing them to our residents and seeing, maybe this is what's going to connect you back to your identity. Maybe this is what's going to open the door, recognizing that it doesn't look the same for everybody. So, I think that's one of the big things I would say is, I hate to say validation, because, there's a part of me that's like, I don't need your validation. I don't need you to validate my culture. But the truth is, they hold the power, and, sometimes they hold the purse strings, and, recognizing that we have practices that are every bit as effective as your clinical model, or whatever was published in that journal last month, and then maybe even going so far as to validate, in an academic sense, what we are doing, providing evaluations for pilot programs that we're doing, so that we are building a clearinghouse of evidence-based models. I wrote a grant a couple years ago, and I had to pour through journals just to find a study that proved that cultural connectedness represented a resiliency factor. And actually, I have that up. So there was a 2018 University of Montana study that found overall self-reported levels of cultural connectedness represented a resiliency factor for non-recidivism. The study suggested that a 1 unit increase in self-reported level of cultural participation was associated with a 36% decrease in the likelihood for recidivism. This finding supports intervention efforts geared towards inclusion of cultural activities and increased access to cultural resources and elders. And, you know, I went on to say that these findings support the intuitive knowledge held by Indigenous people that cultural connection is key in maintaining balance, which is very important in our culture, which is foundational for everything else, healthy minds, bodies, and spirits. And it also identifies participation in cultural activities as a protective factor for the development of negative outcomes. And it's so true. Like, we know that. We were doing just fine before colonization. So, you know, let's have a little more respect for what we already know. Finish, Tish.
Thank you, Talia, and thank you, everyone. I'm going to pass the mic to my colleague, Chris. I know we're actually a little bit over time, but I want to just send a heartfelt thank you to all of our panelists and also our attendees for being here and allowing us to, and for our panelists for allowing us to bear witness to your knowledge, your narratives, and your experience. I'm so grateful.
I want to echo what Karma shared. Thank you so much, 고맙습니다, for allowing us to sit here and listen, as Enei said, learning to listen to stories and what messages and learnings and wisdoms can be driven from there are so critical, as those stories root back millennia and time immemorial. So I just really appreciate you being present here and allowing us, our communities, to sit here and listen once again. And thank you all as participants for listening on the conversations as well, and celebrating Native American and Indigenous Heritage Month here with us at CSSW. I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, wherever you may be located.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Finish, Tish.
And Masi
Yeah,
Chay.
we're going in.